Hello to everyone everywhere. Thank you for joining us. This is Spurs Diehards Tottenham Till I Die. I am Drew Zilla, and tonight I will be hosting the show along with my compatriot Adrian. How you doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. Looking for the show. We've got a great panel, excellent guests as usual.
Awesome. Good to hear from you. And we have a couple of special guests today, along with our regular, Mr. Alan Rakdos Madness. Alan, how are you doing?
Well, very happy it's Friday. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, very, very happy it's Friday. Got some nice weather rolling through the Midwest as well. A nice
Oh,
60
good.
degrees. A nice 60 degrees, even though it is a little bit windy. So it's all good.
Nice.
And then these two guys need no introduction. The Irish Hotspur, it's Jack and Dave. Jack, I'll ask you, how you doing, sir?
Good to be back. Thanks for having me this time. I'm gonna probably show my age in some of these picks for the all-time Premier League 11, but I don't want to give away what we're doing on the show, so I'll shut up now.
I knew
Thanks
ages
for having me.
I didn't expect it so early.
It's all good. It's all good. We actually we kind of promoted it last week that we were doing a little Premier League
that's right.
11, and I think we might actually extend it because I do want to get a little bit of a bench going as well. So it may end up being a Premier League 15, 16, but we'll see how the time goes. Mr. Dave Harris, how are you, sir?
Yeah, not too bad. Keeping well, my man. Thanks very much for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure having you on. And I know we were just chatting beforehand, and I just want to reiterate again how much I appreciate you and Jack and what you've done over the last 6 months for me in the Irish Hotspur. It's a joy having you on over there, and we'll get you.
For us. We appreciate
It's all
you.
good. Everybody in the chat, the little banner here at the bottom of the screens to get over. And if you don't know already, Irish Hotspur do a lot of great content over there on the YouTubes. And I'd say hello to the people in the chat real quick. We've got Blaine Dev. How's it going, sir? Hope you're doing well. Shorts 81, Spurs GCTV. Good to see you again, sir. Lisa Davis, thank you very much for joining as always. Destiny 5, bring Poch home. We're going to be discussing or touching on that a little bit later, although I, for one, am one of the last people to want anybody out of a job. So I'm just gonna hold back on that a little bit, but I do appreciate the desire one way or another. All right, we've got a slightly different show, being as we've got the international break this week. We are going to be doing, as I touched on, the Premier League 11, and we're just going to be going over some news and bits and pieces. I'm going to get the panel's thoughts on a couple of things that have happened over the last few weeks. And I guess while I'm thinking about it, actually, just because it's come to me, we've had news this morning or over the last 24 hours that it's most likely that Mr. Don Paratici is going to be going to AC Milan. And I just wonder, Dave, I think I'd like to start with you because I know you're a big fan. Just quickly, if we can get your thoughts on that, my friend.
Yeah, look, I'm a bit worried about it, to be honest with you. Look, with Paratici, I did like a lot of his recruitment along with Gabonini. He deserves a lot of praise as well, and I think a lot of their recruitment was good for the football club. A lot of the players that we're using right now that are in, the first 11, like Romero, Giovanni Vens, players like that, were all bought in by him. And, I think he also had a big job to do at Tottenham. He had to come in and got an old squad on massive wages, try and get rid of them, whilst also building a new squad. And quite frankly, he was under a lot more constraints than what Johan Lang was because of the size of the job he had to do. He also built the scouting department. He's the reason why a lot of the youngsters we have today signed on the dotted line and didn't go elsewhere and sign for other clubs like they were doing under previous in previous seasons gone by and stuff like that. And I just think with Johan Lang coming in, I think his job was easy. All he had to do was really add the right pieces of the puzzle and, we'd push on. And I don't think he has done. When you look at someone like Johan Lang, look at Aston Villa's recruitment since they got rid of him and brought in Munchie. They're bringing in the likes of your Asensios, players like that who, quite frank, could have came to Tottenham in January and made a massive difference and helped push us on. But, the thing is with Johan Lang, he just doesn't have the contacts or respect in the game the way someone like Paratici does. And to be honest, I just don't think he's got the nous of the way Paratici does. I think with Johan Lang, I think we're overpaying for some of the players that we're buying because with Paratici, you know, he'd go to a club and say how much, and if they went to rip him off, he'd say, look, I've got 10 other plates spinning, good luck, I'm out of here. So then they were almost going, oh, look, we'll come back, we'll take this. And I think, you know, he got a lot of his recruitment for fair prices. I look at Johan Lang, I think he's overpaying for some players, but I just don't think his recruitment's good, you know. People wonder why we haven't kicked on this year. Well, when in the summer, you know, why other teams were going across Europe into respected leagues and picking up players, we were going out to the K-League. We went out to the Swedish second division. We've gone down to the championship here, there, and everywhere. And, you know, I've always said, you know, coming into this season, I think the recruitment is going to let us down and Ange Postecoglou down dramatically this season. And it's sort of panned out that way. And I just think, you know, Johan Lang, I don't think he's good for this football club. I'd be quite frank. I think he's a bit of a Steve Hitchen. I think Daniel Levy's backing the wrong man here.
Adrian, what do you think? You think we've missed a trick getting you know, letting Paratici slip through our fingers potentially? I mean, it seems to
well, I mean, Dave sort of half alluded to it. I mean, reading between the lines, we know that Paratici and Levy are well connected. They're rumoured to be having coffee or breakfast around Hadley Wood. You know, we've seen photos, if they're not fake photos, of someone who lookalikes or whatever. And you know that, like, if we're looking for someone, Levy's going to be on the phone to Paratici anyway. Like, it doesn't mean to say because he isn't an employee, he's still not going to be of use to us or help us out. It's the way of the world in the football. These people, interrelated links and agents, they're always talking to each other. Big agencies the same. So, no, I don't think it's a loss, actually. I would have liked him back when his band's up the end of June. But because the fan base would like it, you know, they would see it as a positive amongst all the negatives we have surrounding our club. Yeah. So, no, I mean, he's done well. I mean, traditionally, I mean, most clubs with their sporting directors, as a fact, they normally get about 50% of their transfers right? Getting players in. Paritici's record's about 65%, I think, which is excellent, you know, because you're not going to get them all right, you know. Nowadays, you should be getting them better because the due diligence should be a lot better. You should also be doing a psychological profile of players you're bringing in, and then you don't end up with someone like Ndombele. You know what I mean? So, so back to you, Drew. Yeah.
Very true. Very true. Jack, I know you were always a fan. I just don't, if you wanted anything that you wanted to add.
I think the guys have mostly covered it. What I might say is it seems like Paratici just enjoys taking on the difficult jobs. AC Milan are actually in a bit of a basket case of a situation. You know, they hired Paulo Fonseca, did not go well with Fonseca. They just sacked him this season. They then brought in through Porto's former manager, Sergio Conceição, one of my favorite names to say, and also that legendary guy for that cigar meme that we continue to use. And it's not going too well for him either. Their recruitment has been pretty good, but you would say that maybe there are a lot of things kind of that are not going so well for AC Milan. They've even been accused of Americanizing, you know, their club a little bit too much by the Italians. So I could say maybe he just likes taking on dumpster fires, and he took on our dumpster fire. He did very well with it, you know, repaired it very, very quickly, and then passed it off to, like Dave said, Johan Lange, who I think hasn't done very well with it. But maybe he's just like a guardian angel, you know, as a director of football.
I do think, I like to hope that maybe 4 or 5 years from now, we'll be looking back, and at the very least, the fingerprints of, or the hands of Don Paratici will, at the very least, still be littered throughout this squad. So, Alan, anything you wanted to add on that before we move on?
Yeah, just that I'm surprised, considering all the loyalty that Spurs showed Paratici during that whole hearing, and then post the hearing when he was kind of like persona non grata, you know, because he was. At the time, it was a very long ban. Now we're seeing the tail end. But at the time, it was a long ban. And we still kept him on in some unofficial capacity. And he was still around. So I'm kind of surprised he's leaving, to be honest. Yeah. You know, just because we showed him so much loyalty at his lowest, why, when he's just about to get out of that, are we not committing to him or recommitting to him once his ban is up? I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a Yeah, so that's a fair take. I hadn't really looked at it from that point of view before. I guess the only thing that I would say to sort of maybe counter that would be, obviously Lang has now come in. You can't have two directors of football, or I guess one would be seen to be stepping on the other's toes. And from Paratici's point of view, you can understand him wanting to, he probably doesn't want to, once the ban's over, doesn't want to just be a consultant. Like Dave said on Jack, Jack says he likes the dirty jobs, wants to get his hands dirty. And I think he's kind of obviously been sitting on the sidelines for 18 months. And I guess like any good player coming back for an injury, he's eager to get back on the pitch and start playing. So from that point of view, when somebody dangles a decent opportunity in front of you, I can obviously understand them wanting to take it and not have to sort of, kick can down the street waiting for somebody to make a decision. And on that note,
it's just quickly though, it's disappointing because some of the players that we've been able to bring in from the likes of the Serie A and all, they're some of our best players, and I think now. I don't think Johan Lang will be able to sort of bring them players to the club now going forward. I think I'm really concerned. You look at his last few windows, the first window, Timo Werner on the abyss of football for how long? Radu Dragusin hasn't worked out. You go into the summer transfer window, completely missed the mark when we needed experienced players. You come into January, Ange Postecoglou needed more help. He spoke in the build-up to the January transfer window about needing, experience, leadership. When we go and sign, Kinski and Matisse Tell. I mean, he's completely missing the mark. And, from what I understand and what I read the other day is, that I think, is it true that, I think Paratici wanted to put the guy in at PSG in, but I think it was Daniel Levy that wanted to go down the route of Ange Postecoglou. And, I think, he's sticking by that, which I don't mind. I've always asked for him to stick by a guy and back it.
Right.
But if you don't have the right recruitment guy in place, your manager's going to keep taking the fire the way he is, and Johan Lang will keep getting away with it and still be here. His recruitment has been completely poor. He's completely mismanaged the situation, and he's not good for this football club.
Yeah, just on the Paratici front, I mean, Dave will know as well as me because we'll post each other on WhatsApp, anything happening with the academy and things like that, and times of games and pictures and stuff. I'm always doing that to him, and he'll post stuff back to me or respond in kind or whatever. And it cannot be understated what Paratici's done with the academy as well, where when Dean Rastrick went, they broke the pay structure, which was why we couldn't get kids in while our academy was so poor. And you've seen over the last 2 years, I don't know if the under-18s or under-17s are in a final. They're in a final anyway. And I haven't had the opportunity to watch. I mean, I know Dave watched a lot of the under-21s last year. I think I watched nearly every game last year when they swept up everything. So, yeah, I mean, and it looks like this is the way we're going to continue in the future. And that's good for this club. That's one positive, because if you keep bringing these kids in and they want to come, then that is definitely a positive, because we can afford to pay wages to kids that other clubs can't pay. Not necessarily Chelsea, Man United.
The problem is, though, Adrian, it's a bit of a mixed message, though. You're bringing in the likes of Matisse Tell. I'm sorry, what has he done that Mikey Moore hasn't shown us he can already do this season? You know what I mean? Even that they're managing to screw up right now to a large degree.
I'm talking about mainly academy level, Dave. I wasn't talking about the recent youngsters.
No, I know.
We haven't brought in enough oven-ready players. I'm totally. We didn't do it in the summer. Only one, and that was like Solanke. So, and out of the kids also, with regard to the transfer window and all that, and whatever happens, are we making a pathway? Because if two players should be in that squad next year, it should be Mikey Moore and Vaskovic, in my opinion. Now, whether the others go out on loan, that's different. And then you might think, okay, if those two are part of the squad, we still need to bring in 3 or 4. You know what I mean? So,
well, let me.
I don't want the pathway blocked to Vaskovic or Mikey Moore, though. Go on, Drew.
No, but I mean, I can completely understand not wanting the pathway to be blocked, but isn't there an argument at their age that they might, they just might not be ready? And you need, if we want to push on, potentially as a club, we need to. I mean, I've been harping on about a bit more experience for probably the better part of 6 months since the beginning, since December, really. When and Ange, God bless him, he's doing absolutely the best he can. And everybody knows my position that I wouldn't say I'm staunch Ange in, but I do, think there's been extenuating circumstances this season. And I think he's been somewhat he's been somewhat let down by the recruitment staff, or
100%.
not the staff, but the squad management. We're certainly at least a couple of really, really good bodies shy. So I just wanted to sort of touch on this. I mean, let me ask you, Alan, how
Hmm.
how far are we? I mean, in terms of this squad, if you were going to highlight, I guess let's talk about the top 3 positions. If you're going to highlight the top 3 positions that we really, really need to strengthen, what are we saying?
Well, I think we're looking at a winger. We're looking at a midfielder, and we're looking at another center back. Because we're going to have
Basically all the way through the
just
team.
straight down. Straight
one in
down.
each
One
position.
one in each position. Because we're probably going to lose Romero. I think everyone is starting to come to that realization and to come to terms with that. Because I think Real Madrid is going to come calling, looking for him. Antonio Rudiger is not a young person, at least, for football. They have kind of an aging back line. They had, what's his name? He's been out all season with like a ACL injury or something like that. I forget.
Oh, Alba.
Yeah.
Daniel Alaba?
Yeah.
David Alaba.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm really showing my thumb. Really starting.
David?
Do you know what? They've got this thing over here called Prevagen, and it's on TV, it's on adverts, and it's basically old people take it as they're walking around lakes so that they can, just be slightly more aware, like helps them just through their days. And I feel like I need to take some. Honestly, I'm 45 years old and I feel like I'm losing my marbles, got early onset dementia or something. Yeah, Alaba. Let's just call him Alaba. Brilliant.
Sure. But they have. He wants to win. He's the kind of player that isn't satisfied with a long-term project. I think and he's a product of all of the winning that he's done before this. So
For Argentina,
I think
yeah.
we're gonna lose him. We're gonna move on. I think Basuma. I think I read a story even about that we're ready to start moving on from him. I think everyone has recognized that his performance has been subpar for quite a while and inconsistent. And I think that he is someone that we can improve upon. And up in the front, we desperately need a winger, someone who kind of does like what Ivan Perisic would do. I wasn't a huge fan of Ivan Perisic, but I really liked how he could cross the ball in to the center very well. He was quick and he did a lot of crossing. And
he did have that great cadence. I know Sean Butler was talked about a great cadence with his feet, and he would always put a defender on his back foot and always find room, seem to make room to be able to cross it.
And I think I think he scored for Croatia recently, and he scored for, even though they lost horribly. I think wasn't he on PSV's team that lost really bad?
Yeah, I think.
But he scored.
He scored a couple in the game previous. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's even still, but we don't have a player like that right now. None of our wingers do a very good job of crossing the ball into the center, evidenced by the fact that Dom Solanke's not getting enough service. So he can only do so much. Manufacturing goals is not so simple, and that's not really the job that we hired him for.
Yeah.
We needed someone that can just be a tap-in merchant. I think would be fine with me.
Jack, thoughts bolstering the squad this summer?
Oh, geez. I know you only mentioned 3. I'll say a winger. Ideally, I think we need 2 on either side. A replacement for Richarlison and competition / Solanke, another striker. And if I can only narrow it down to 3, then I'd say a left back as well. It's just because Destiny Udogie has literally no competition at the moment in time, other than Jet Spence, who should also be competition for Pedro Porro. And we don't technically have anybody really coming through the academy that I'm aware of that we can bring through, as a competition for Udogie. So I'm just going to say left back, another striker, because Richarlison is likely to leave, and then another winger.
Fair play. Dave, anything, any more building blocks to add to that? I'm sure probably.
Look, I think we've seen this year, in terms of we need a proper squad to compete going forward. And look, I think a proper squad is, you've got 16, 17, 18, maybe inexperienced players. And then I'm okay with having some of the youngsters around, like the likes of your Bergvall and Gray. They've proven to be good assets. They've proven that you can rely on them. I'm okay with having Mikey Moore around next year. I'd be also interested in giving someone like Donnelly a look in. But I think we definitely need someone else to come in here and compete with Solanke. We need someone on the right wing that's automatically much better than Johnson, that Johnson sees them levels and either drags himself to it or he doesn't. I think, competition maybe for James Maddison, I think, would be a good thing. And we definitely need another fullback. It's interesting because you don't know whether Jed Spence has performed better on the left this season than what he has on the right. So either way, but we need one more fullback that can play, on one of the sides to be able to really give good competition. Because what we can't do is, if we do end up winning the Europa League, which is a long shot, but if we do, and we have 4 competitions again next year, what we can't do is keep going into every season relying on a small squad, and then when players get injured or suspensions and games come in thick and fast, we're all turning to the manager and going, just make it work, like they're Harry Potter, like they can just wave a wand, Expelliarmus, and make it work. It's not the case. We've seen that. We need to build a proper squad. We need to add experience. You look at the likes of Arsenal's recruitment. Some people go, why are they recruiting so many in so many positions? But they're challenging for almost everything. You look at Liverpool's squad. You look at their front line, they've got 5 or 6 players that could all start in most teams across the Premier League. Look at the competition in midfield, etc. This is where we need to get to. Other clubs are showing us this. You need a strong squad. So that's what we need to build this summer. We need to build a proper squad and stop bringing in little bits and pieces here and there, because that's what we always do. We know what we need and we'll bring in 50% of it and then go, okay, it's over to you now, to the manager. And we can't keep doing that.
Yeah. Do you guys think that, based on, obviously, I know it's not quite the level, but based on what Donnelly's doing, based on what a couple of the kids have done this season, the fact that Archie Gray and Bergvall have sort of come on more so than we kind of expected, because obviously nobody foresaw the injury issues. Do you think with those youngsters being there already and the levels they're at, that we really, really need to concentrate on more established, you're looking at 25 to 28-year-olds, at least sort of 2, 3 of those coming in, and then maybe rotate a couple of the youngsters in? And you think that would be enough to get us challenging?
Yeah,
100%. That's what I think we've been crying out for all season, is majority of the players that we played in some of these biggest games, haven't even played in technically massive games before. Even when you look at the Europa League, right? The team that we fielded the other night, how many of those guys actually had European experience at a high level? Very, very few of them. And even James Maddison might have been, I think, the second most experienced probably in that team, alongside the likes of I think it was Sonny, but then you look across pretty much the whole team there, not even a whole lot of experience for the most part. And I think that's what we should be looking at. At this stage, it feels like we are well saturated on young talent, coming through. Like, I think we've absolutely done the business there. I don't really see much of a reason to bring in or buy technically more young talent. I don't think we need to be buying anymore. We need to be looking at guys who've technically been there, done that, and are ready to basically challenge for the first team straight away. And then if there are youngsters who and a lot of us, might think are technically good enough to compete as well, then, that's a good situation to have, where you have experienced guys who you can lean on in tough situations and tough games. But then, there's always that gem, there's always that starlet that will, against all odds, shine, above the rest, and that's what we need. Whereas right now, my sympathy for Ange is that he doesn't have anybody that he can really look towards on a regular basis that, can sort of step up when the times get tough, can step up when you're going into a difficult game. And we also probably need to even be looking at a guy, as much as Vicario and Kulusevski might be lined up to be future captains, might need to bring in a guy that also has a bit of that sort of former leadership, sort of capabilities. Maybe he doesn't need to be a captain, but at least, is sort of a good voice and a good presence and ego in the dressing room in a good way, ego, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And I've likened it to, I don't think this is the greatest example, but someone like, I don't know, someone like a Sergio Ramos type character that could sort of step into the dressing room and, what he's done before in the game, that he's achieved, the highest of sort of accomplishments and trophies, and having someone like that come through, I think would be really good for Spurs. Selling Højbjerg, I think, has actually hurt us in terms of the experience factor more than we realized. And just a little touch, I think, actually probably signing Bentancur just on a sort of a longer term contract. I think the good reason behind that is he's technically the most experienced midfielder by a long shot, compared to anybody else in that midfield. So that's what Spurs need, Drew. You're 100% right.
I think just to add to that, like with the youngsters, I think they're good at exposing players that no longer, like, that aren't there for the right reasons. Like, you look at Bergvall, he's completely exposed Basuma this season to a large degree, right? That's what they're good for. So that you can say, look, he's no longer at the level. He needs to be moved on. Let's reinvest. That's what they're good for. But, in games this season, there's just been key fundamentals that experienced players would have that would actually help this team over the line in games and help Ange Postecoglou to a large degree. If anyone's digged into Ange Postecoglou's style, sort of style of management, he doesn't like to get involved with the dressing room to a large degree. He likes that to sort of police itself. You also look at him on the sideline. He's not a guy that's going to stand there, point, rant and rave. And look, I don't buy into this all statue thing. But, when you've got a young squad, you do need a guy on the sideline that is going to be almost coaching them through the game, giving them a lot of instructions and stuff like that. So that's where I think we've gone wrong underneath Ange Postecoglou. Like, Drew, you always bring up the amount of games that we've lost by 1 goal this season. It's largely down to inexperience. You know what I mean? If we had some good senior professionals, we see games out on the pitch because, look, Postecoglou takes a lot of the heat, and I can understand some of the heat that he takes. I've questioned some things myself. But when players are out over the white line, it's up to them to start stepping up and make decisions. Like, you look at the carry on the second leg against Vitesse. Near the end, everyone was just setting up to go through the same pattern, same routines and stuff like that. Vicario was the only one that had the calmness in the moment. Said, guys, we don't need to do this. Don't need to take this risk. Push up. It's okay to go long once in a while. And, push up in their half and go long so we're not putting ourselves under pressure. And if we had more of that in the team this season, I think we would have more points on the board to a large degree. And if we had, like Jack said, more vocal players, you get more out of Son this season. You get more out of Maddison this season because they're not afraid to challenge these guys. They're not afraid to say, look, we need more. And every great dressing room needs that. And with the style of manager we've got, and with the style of managers that we've hired in the past, we need them sort of guys in the dressing room to help, on the pitch. The manager can only do so much. The manager can only train them, give the instructions, etc., etc. Once they step over the white line, it's on them players. And too many times this season, when we've been in games in possession, we've been very passive. We haven't really had anyone that wants to say, give me that ball. We need to take advantage of this moment now. But then also, when we've had tough times in the games, players have just sat there and sort of accepted the fate. There's been no one that stand up on the pitch that has gone over to say someone that might need an arm around their shoulder and say, look, come on, we believe in you. Or someone that, responds to a bollocking, go and give them one, pull them out. Because what it does is it wakes people up. It stops the slide from happening. It means you can start pushing back on them. And there's been too much naivety on the pitch this season. And that's because the lack of experience. But Postecoglou spoke about this in many times this season, between the summer transfer window and the build up to January transfer window, about the lack of leadership, the lack of experience and stuff like that. And ultimately, I don't think he's too happy with the recruitment, to be quite frank. But we need experience this year. We sign experience. That's what gets you through the tight games. Like, for instance, you go to the AZ Alkmaar game. As good as Bergvall's been this season, it was his 2 mistakes that made that game more difficult than it needed to be to a large degree. But that's where we need more experienced players for these sort of big games.
Yeah, it was unfortunate because it's one of those things. You do look back across that tie, and it's unfortunate that the 2 goals that were conceded were off of the back of him. But obviously, and I'm not saying you were, but obviously you can't it's one of those things that hopefully over time you would. I mean, the first one was a bit of an anomaly. I think a striker would have been pleased with that finish, that looping shot. But that second one, he could have paused for just a second before playing that pass rather than having ricochet off of Odeberg straight into the danger zone. So yeah, but no, I completely understand where you're coming from, Dave, and I wholeheartedly agree. Like somebody in the middle of the park to just kind of slow everything down, or just to let everyone, give it the whirl, put the brakes on, you do this, you do that. And we've just not really for as long as I can remember, really had somebody that's prepared to take the scruff of that neck and actually really be that guy. I don't think we've really got anybody in midfield that is that sort of player. I call him like a barker, somebody that barks and shouts and just, not for the sake of doing it, not for, but you think we missed. I can understand why change was needed, but you think maybe we missed a trick letting go of Pierre. You think maybe for this season it might have been. I mean, obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing. You can't legislate for what's happened, but I really think this season, I mean, we've been screaming out for a lot of things, but just in general, this team kind of screams out for some sort of Pierre-Emile Højbjerg sort of type.
You look
You had a lot
at
of
last
praise for
season.
Pierre last season, Ange, when you think about it. Like, you used to praise him, when he would, rely on him. You used to say the word experience, and then he would also bring him on at halftime, and he would play great.
How many times did he bring him off the bench last season to sell games, Jack?
Exactly.
To shore it up.
Yeah.
And we don't have anybody like that you can really say, is that sort of person.
Is he on loan? Can we not try and just?
No, it's
the thing is,
the
thing is, Højbjerg wanted out. It was him that made that decision. It wasn't the club that forced him out. We have to remember that it was him that sort of he had enough of Tottenham Hotspur and the empty promises, and he just wanted out. He could see, I know he had enough of the dressing room at the time as well, to a large degree. He already made that decision that he wanted out before Pochettino even came into it. To be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. Well, let me ask you this, if I can. Given the scenario or the situation that we find ourselves in over the last 2 years or 18 months, because of, I mean, obviously I've gone on previously regarding last season and the amount of injuries and kind of a lack of form, and the situation with you got Postecoglou coming in. He's obviously got to change things behind the scenes, which are not not a lot of people are either interested in or privy to. The majority of fans just want to watch their team on the pitch. They want to see some good football, some goals. Let's hope for a win, challenge. But I think, there's obviously things to be taken into consideration because everybody was calling out for a different pathway, a different ethos. So this was the sort of wrecking ball that came in and sort of started to dismantle that. So then you run into the injuries that you had last season. You obviously got the injuries this season. I think, you've got to be open-minded and understand that a team takes time to gel. And I've been on, I've done some research and had a look at sort of the amount of games that the players have played with each other over the course of these couple of seasons, and the likes of your Van der Vens and your Romeros, who have actually only played like, Premier League wise about 38, 39 games together. And, you got partnerships in the midfield that have only played 30, 40 games. And then you go to, some of our rivals, or you go to teams that, we aspire to be like, and you look at partnerships that are 200-300 games old. Would it be, and I know this is contentious because I know a lot of people are just fed up and they want Ange gone. And to the point now where I think, unfortunately, it started to get mean and it started to get personal, which I can't stand. I mean, I think regardless of things that I might have said in the past, and regardless of what channel I think I've been on, I think I've been pretty consistent. I find it very hard to take pops at people. I've always been very, very diplomatic when it comes to criticism. I don't like to just call people names just for the sake of it. I think it's very low-hanging fruit. So is it totally out of the question that, given all of the circumstances the last 18 months, and given the fact that it arguably takes a year, 18 months to implement a new system with a new coach, unless you get lightning in a bottle, which you can't guarantee. That's always a gamble. Is there something to be said for trying to get some sort of consistency and some sort of continuity, and maybe letting the guy, I mean, obviously this comes with caveats, i.e., if it all looks like it's going to sink like the Titanic, then I guess maybe, unfortunately, you just have to pull the plug. But is there something to be said, Alan, I'll go to you, for, suggesting Ange deserves maybe another season?
I think if he wins Europa, very likely he will get another season. Kind of as you said, because at that point he probably will have fulfilled what Levy needed him to fulfill, almost more than anything, because then he gets that Champions League money.
Yeah, just to touch on that, Alan, before I let you carry on, I think there has been reports that have come out this week that have basically said that there have been meetings, the dreaded meetings, and I think if the mainstream media is to be believed, then Levy and Postecoglou have had a meeting, and Levy said that basically it's you got to get in Europe somehow next season, by hook or by crook. I don't think it's been specified exactly what, so there might be a chance if we get enough points in the league, then we might get Europa Conference. That might be enough. But sorry, Alan, just to let you continue. But yeah, I just wanted that sort of out there.
No, that's good. I think it's a big difference between the money they get for Europa and Champions League. I have to imagine that Levy, given the trajectory of the way things are going, I got to imagine that he probably really wants that Champions League money. And it would be, fourth. The only reason why we kind of joke about fourth is because it puts us in Champions League. But if he gets in through winning Europa, then I think he will have done exactly what Levy would have wanted. And I think regardless of anyone, I think he probably ticks that box on, like in FIFA or in FC 25 or whatever, you tick that box in the contract box, and it probably will put him over the line to get another to continue on with his current contract next season. If he doesn't win Europa, if we don't win Europa, then he becomes kind of like we have lame duck presidents at, like Biden was after Trump won his second term. Those couple of months, he's a lame duck president, we call him, because there's not much he can do.
Right. Just sitting there
and
thumbs, essentially, right?
And I'm wondering if that's unfortunately what's going to happen to Ange is he may become a lame duck coach if we keep him for the rest of the season for the sake of stability. But if he stays, if we lose Europa, I don't see him getting another. I don't see him being able to continue his contract next season.
Fair enough. Adrian, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, but we should be planning for a future without Ange, even if he's going to win the Europa League, shouldn't we? So we should be looking. Our recruitment team should be busy in the transfer market, and there are bargains to be had, aren't there? I mean, you could pay 60-odd million for Kuhn to buy him out, Kuna for 62 mil. You could go for Gorokres, or we've been linked with Turman and all that. But for that sort of money, you could go and get Fratesi and Vlahovic, who's coming to the last year of his contract, if you like the player.
For like 25, right?
Or you could get Fratesi for that sort of money, and they are quality. I like both of them. I know perhaps people on this panel won't like them. Also, we're strongly linked with Gomez as well, and I'm not too sure he's very diminutive in the midfield role. You've got to be really quick and an Ardiles type to survive in midfield if you're not got that physicality. So I mean, we should be planning for a future without Ange now. We should always be looking ahead, no matter who the manager is.
Well, no, absolutely.
I hear what you're saying there, Adrian, but that's if you're buying the likes of your Victor Gyökeres and you're out there buying top talent. But if you're out there in the market that we're shopping in, that's where you do have to know who your manager is, because the reality is, right, we have this idea of philosophy that if you build an attacking squad, match it up with attacking managers, it'll work. but we had three defensive managers on the bench, but they all played different systems and all wanted different players for that system. And, you know, with the market that we shop in, it's imperative that you are giving the manager players that he wants. That's the whole reason why. Like, we don't hire bar managers at Tottenham Hotspur. Jose Mourinho has won more trophies than anyone could imagine. Conte, look at the job he's done, you know, before Tottenham, since Tottenham. Look at Nuno, you know. Look what he done. Look what we got out of him at Tottenham, and look what Forest are getting out of him. You know, look what every other club has got out of Ange. It doesn't matter whether it's Celtic or the J League or whatever. Look what they've got out of Ange Postecoglou, and look what we're getting out of them. You know, we have a history since Pochettino of not getting the best out of our managers, and I'd also argue none of them have really been able to stamp their authority or style of play on the squads either to a large degree. You know, and I believe a lot of the frustration, you know, that we're seeing now, it is built up frustration from 3-4 managers. Everything that we've seen since Pochettino, and the next guy that comes in, he's also going to carry that frustration. There's going to be less time towards him yet again because of that frustration. But the reality is, look, I do think Ange has to get us Europe. Like, the thing is, I've said this before, I don't blame Ange for everything that's gone on at this club. You know, you look at what's going on in the physio department, you know, and then you look at all of our injuries. People put it down to style of play, but the reality is Pochettino's training week in, week out was a lot more intense. You had to meet certain metrics. You hear players coming back from injuries, moaning how long it took them to get back, you know, doing his training sessions and stuff like that. You know, Conte, he ran the nuts off them. I think it was 6-point-something K he ran off them before the games in the pre-match build-up. People at it, you know, that was... You know, Postecoglou ain't doing that to them in the warm-up and stuff like that. And, you know, people also forget underneath Antonio Conte, there was a period where he had the bench filled out with academy products because we suffered massive injury crisis. So it's not just underneath Postecoglou, and that's why I don't put it just down to style of play. I've also said recruitment matters. You know, if you want to put... When you're getting a squad and you're bringing a new squad, the first thing you should do is look who your leaders are going to be to bring that squad forward, get them in the door, you know. Postecoglou, we didn't do that. You know, we brought in a lot of youth players and just said, Postecoglou, make it work. You know, we failed to replace Harry Kane adequately enough. You bring an attacking manager, you know, who needs an out-and-out goal scorer to go and win you games. And we sell him right under his nose just before he takes over at the start of the season. You know, his job at Tottenham has not been easy. But where I think he hasn't helped himself in this role is you look at Jurgen Klopp, you know, when he had his injury problems, he went to the academy, played them. They still went on one on FA Cup. And I don't think Ange has been brave enough in turning to some of them academy players and saying, do you know what? I can't keep rolling Kulusevski out there every single game. Can't keep rolling this guy out there every single game. He's only back from injury. I can't keep pulling them back in. At some point, I do think he should have been a bit more, you know, trusting of some of these youngsters. And who knows, you know, they might have helped them out. And that's where I think, you know, he's let me down to a large part this season. I thought he would have been a bit more braver and given some of them more opportunities, you know, in times of need and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you need to see progression. And this season, I take into account the injuries and everything else. But, you know, you're seeing him coming out the end of it, you know, popping at fans and stuff like that. And I just think he's losing, like, you know, even the goodwill he does have, every time he has a pop at a fan, he's losing that every time he does that. And I think, you know, the way he's handling it right now, and I just think, honestly, when you're seeing the likes of other managers being linked, we've been here before under Conte and under Jose Mourinho. We know what's going to take place. So obviously, me and Spurs are out there speaking around, talking to people and stuff like that. Because, you know, why else would a lot of these guys be linked and stuff like that? But at the end of the day, I just think, and the thing is, I don't think Postecoglou's bad manager. I think if he leaves Tottenham, he'll go on somewhere else. They'll reap the benefits of it, just like Nuno, you know, and just like Forest have done with Nuno. I don't think Postecoglou is as bad as a manager as everyone makes out to be. But the only way he should be in this job next year is if they're willing to back it properly this summer and they're willing to acknowledge, look, we got it wrong last summer. Come out and say to the fans, look, we got it wrong last summer. We didn't give Ange everything that we could have. But this summer, we recognize the problems and we're going to fix that. We're going to go after players of experience and leadership so that, you know, we can have a proper squad going forward. And if they're not prepared to do that, then you have to change direction. You have to bring in a guy. So, and I'm not saying Pochettino, but someone similar to Pochettino who will work on these guys day in, day out on the training ground during games, will give them instructions, help them through games and stuff like that. Because Ange isn't that guy. He said it all comes from back his time in Australia where he was playing in the team, Puskas got sacked or moved on. He ended up becoming manager, and he was friends with some of the players, and he purposely detached himself from the dressing room because because of his best friend and stuff, he had to drop him and stuff like that. So he doesn't want that attachment with the dressing room. But when you've got a young squad, you have to control that dressing room. And if he's not willing to do that either, and the recruitment and the management ain't matching up, then you have to make a change for the good of Tottenham Hotspur. It doesn't make Ange Postecoglou a bad manager. But if your recruitment and your manager style ain't matching up, then we see what we see this season.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
and to add to that, Dave, as well, I mean, winning the Europa is so important because without European football, we're going to have to pay good wages to attract players to come to this club, especially the quality that we want.
We have the scout. We have the room, though. Look at the amount of players off high wages that we've got rid of. We have a video coming out about expiring contracts coming up. We're also going to be offloading big wages. Now it's time to reinvest. There's no excuse not to go into that market. If you really, there's no point in bringing in these managers for what they've done elsewhere and then not finance it. Finance it half-assed and then go, you make the rest work. I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that.
No, very good points, Dave. Very good. Jack, I wanted to ask you because this leads on. Dave mentioned it. Probably going through this roundabout again. As I said, while the guy's in the job, I'm hesitant myself to talk about it because I feel like I get kind of Martin Yole vibes. Like, it's almost a little bit weird. I feel a little bit dirty talking about it. But it's news, it's Tottenham, and it kind of needs to be discussed. So based on that, I mean, if there is a situation, as Dave's pointed out, where the manager and the recruitment team aren't aligned, or it's just not kind of meshing. I mean, being as we've been rumoured with these guys, the likes of your Thomas Franks, your Iraola, Marco Silva, even Simone Inzaghi, which I find a little ludicrous and probably highly unlikely now that, the Paratici news has dropped. Terzic, obviously, former Dortmund. I mean, is there anything, and this is the thing, right? I'm about to use the word pragmatic, and I find that a little bit contradictory because I feel like a couple of years ago, we were all fed up with these pragmatic, sit back, work with what you've got kind of managers. We wanted to go a little bit more in a different direction. But I feel like, at least a couple of these are kind of going back to, or at the very least, Thomas Frank is a little bit of a U-turn in my eyes to where we've sort of come from. And I don't know, that feels like just a real backward step for me. But what's your thoughts?
I'd agree with that, actually. I think Thomas Frank is very similar to what we had previously with like a Nuno or something like that. Someone who doesn't really care about having possession, is more, kind of maybe pragmatic and, very conservative. He has a lot of his goals just come from two players in Bumo and Visa, just sort of, hitting people on the counterattack. And then he also just sort of floods the box with center backs. I don't think that it's that pretty to watch, but it is effective. But again, would Spurs fans be okay with that? I'm not too sure. Then the same thing could be said actually with guys like Edin Terzic, I think as well. Like, I feel like people have Edin Terzic all wrong. During his time at Dortmund, the reason why he wasn't even that great of a manager, which is also the surprising thing, I find. But he didn't do particularly well in instilling like the Dortmund Jurgen Klopp sort of, gegenpressing style. He was like a former ultra big fan of Dortmund that was brought in just sort of to make the vibes good again to a degree. And then he was very effective in sort of beating teams in the cups. And that's what kind of got him a bit of a reputation there. But that was through like, again, very conservative, very counterattacking focused type of style. And I don't see him being able to translate that, to the Premier League. And then also, like we've seen with the Premier League, even with Ange, I think you get found out very quickly. And I don't think Edin Terzic by any means is like a tactically astute manager. I think he's a guy that was able to get these Dortmund players to sort of run through a wall because, he was a fan himself, of the club. He couldn't translate that energy to Spurs because he's not a Spurs fan at the end of the day. The guy who I do think is, in a way, realistic to bring in, but then is also probably realistic considering how much Daniel Levy seems to hand tie managers and put them in a bad situation. I think Marco Silva actually has shown to be quite good at working with what he has available to him. Davis brought this up. He's probably had some of the worst, sort of squads with either Everton, Watford, even now with Fulham. Like, you look at that Fulham team, it's full of like Premier League rejects, from Alex Iwobi to Raul Jimenez, to even like, what is it, or what is it, the Welsh player. And, he had like Tim Ream, at one point that he was doing quite well with. The guy's done pretty well with pretty average players, in my opinion, for the most part, if not below average, and has been able to punch well above his weight. And even when he came back to the Premier League with Fulham, and I think this is when he had Tim Ream and some of those guys, everybody lined him up to be the first one to go down in the Premier League, and he actually wasn't. I think he finished like mid-table or something like that. So Marco Silva seems like a guy, if Daniel Levy is just going to continue to screw over managers with recruiting and everything like that, seems like a guy that will be able to a degree, figure it out and probably, again, punch above his weight despite being kind of hand-tied. And maybe that's the kind of manager we need. It's very depressing to put it in those sort of terms, but, it might be more realistic to how sort of Spurs have operated in the last 10 years. Whereas with Iraola, as much as I've been very impressed by him, he seems like he would fall victim to a lot of what the other managers have, where he's a guy that has a philosophy, has a way of playing, and needs certain players in order for that to succeed. And, that's not going to happen with Spurs. You're going to have some way where you're going to kind of screw him over in some way. And can Iraola be able to do that? Be able to battle, through the adversity of being a Spurs manager, not having everything available to him? I'm not too sure. Whereas I actually think Marco Silva has probably shown, in a very boring way, but in a very effective way, he has shown that he can work with what's available to him. And so I think he actually could do quite well at Spurs and under that logic. And again, very depressing logic.
Right. Well, in that case, there's one name on here that I've left till last, and I just want to give a quick shout. We've got 69 people in here watching. We're going just under an hour, so big up. Really appreciate you joining the show. Again, Spurs Diehards, Tottenham Till I Die. Adrian and myself usually on here every Friday. There's also a show Tuesdays and Sundays, I believe.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's the guys over the Irish Hotspur who do a lot of shows a lot of the time, especially if you're a member. A lot of extra content over there, so do get over there if you can. We are going to get into the best Premier League 11, 15 squad for Spurs just here shortly, but we do just want to round up sort of touching on this. As I say, the last name in here that isn't is obviously this guy. Now, I love Pochettino, but he does have a tendency to twerk for teams. Did it a couple of times when he was with us. Obviously, had a little bit of a flirt with United, had a little bit of a flirt with Real Madrid. And now, obviously, he's the US men's national team coach, who I believe didn't do very well last night. I think lost to
Nope.
Ecuador.
Panama.
Panama, which I mean, I don't know if that might be equally as bad. I don't know if I'm doing
The only
Ecuador
thing
a
they're known for is the
disservice.
Panama Papers. That's it.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
No, it was a very bad game, very poor game. Not done well.
What do we think of this, Dave?
Look, Pochettino.
And do you think, and given that, I thought the coaches were supposed to be some sort of band of brothers, or at least some of them were. Do you think it's fair that he should be saying this sort of thing, given our current situation? And does it undermine Postecoglou?
Look, I don't think he should, but at the end of the day, it's not his fault he's asked the question. If he's asked the question, he's put on the spot, he's going to answer it. We all know that he has a deep affection for Tottenham Hotspur. To a degree, it was a perfect marriage. He put us on the map and we put him on the map.
Right.
But the reality is, the first time around, he set expectations that he's probably never going to achieve again at Tottenham Hotspur.
Right.
Reaching the Champions League final, being in how many cup finals, cup semi-finals, how many league title challenges did we have? And I just think also, we had a lot of good recruitment at the time. We sprinkled that team with the likes of your Alderweireld and players like that, your Wanyamas and players like that to really come in and sort of help him and kick that squad on. I think at Tottenham Hotspur again, and in order to have that final push to get over the line, when we knew from the December before the Champions League final that we weren't going to have Dembele and Wanyama anymore moving forward, We never went out in that summer transfer window. We never went out in that transfer window and tried to bring in a player like that, knowing how important that was to the system and to the midfield. And ultimately, we ended up paying the price for it, and so did he. And I just think, if he comes back, are they just going to take the piss with him again in terms of you can have this but not this and everything else? He also went through 3 windows without a signing. And let's not forget, the opportunity was already there for this to happen. And for whatever reason, Pochettino has always sort of extended the invitation. I'd love to come back here one day. But for whatever reason, Daniel Levy has never, ever gone and made that happen. We had the opportunity to make this happen before we bought Postecoglou in here. There was talks about him going to Chelsea, and he sort of held off on that for a long time and only made that decision really once he knew there was no opportunity for him to come to Tottenham Hotspur. So it's sort of like, I'm not convinced. Like, it's one thing Pochettino saying it, but I'm not convinced from Levy's side that he wants to bring Pochettino back. And also, to a degree, if he does, with the 5 years we've had, and if he walks in without us really showing any sort of sign of getting back to where we were, everybody's going to call it one big mistake. Everyone's going to start highlighting Daniel Levy and everything else. And I think he's clued into all of that. And for that reason alone, I don't think until a manager comes in here and gets us back to a certain level, I don't think he's going to extend the arm to bring a Pochettino back in. I get it that, you look at a lot of the young players that we've had come through the academy. That's one thing he done at Tottenham Hotspur. When he came in, we had a lot of old players, that were on big wages but didn't really give a toss about the football club. He cleared them out. He turned to the academy, brought through players, and stuck with them and gave them an opportunity. He gave players that were out on loan for a lot of time a large opportunity, and then we sprinkled that with some good players, some experienced Premier League players to come in here and help kick that on. But I'd also like to talk about some of the other managers on the list. The reality is, look, we can sit here and say we like what he does at this club, we like what he does at that club. But given evidence since Pochettino, do you back them? Do you back them to come here and bring what they've done at other clubs here? Everyone talks about Iraola, which I do find a little bit hypocritical. First of all, they talk about Iraola and how great he's been, but no one talks about the recruitment that they've made for him, and bringing in experienced, European players. Everyone says, when we're winning, Ange never shuts up, never sits back. Well, he lost a 2-0 lead against us. He didn't do anything tactically to try and shut that game out. He goes and presses on the front foot just like we do. He plays out from the back just like we're trying to do. The difference is there's a lot of players in that Bournemouth team that people would take right now to help kick us on. Semenyo was a player I picked out and said to Jack, watch this guy before anyone even started talking about this guy. Says this guy, great bit of business, stuff like that. And the rest of them, look, they're all really defensive managers, and yeah, they tweak game to game. But for me, I don't actually see that as a strength to a large degree. I see that as a weakness. It means your squad ain't good enough to go and compete. If you're tweaking game to game, you're switching up your style from game to game and what you want to try and do, that means your squad ain't good enough to go and compete. So you've already accepted that. You're already telling them that they're not good enough, and that's why we're changing it here, there, and everywhere and everything else. For me, we are a club where we can say this is the way we want to play. But you've got to back it. It all comes down to recruitment. So the reality is, it doesn't matter who's in the door. First season, they come in, they do well, they get the initial manager bounce. It's the second season where they all find trouble and where they all get sacked. So that's where I'll wait and see how they handle that. But the reality is, you can bring anybody in here you want to. We have not got anything out of Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, Nuno, and Ange Postecoglou, all well-respected managers in the game for their own right. So what makes us think Iraola is going to come here and do what he done at Bournemouth? What makes us think Thomas Frank's going to come in here and do what he done at Brentford? What makes us think Marco Silva's going to come here and do what he's done at Fulham? When there's a history of managers not being able to implement what they've done at other clubs. So for me, it's all about your recruitment. You get your recruitment right, you give your manager a chance. You get it wrong, you throw him under the bus.
That won't, yeah, I agree, David, and that won't happen with these managers. And where are these innovative managers that we had in the past, like your Venables, Bobby Robson, Hoddle and all that? Glenn Hoddle's only 66 years of age. All right, he's had heart trouble. All right? If you don't bring him in as manager or assistant manager, you give him a role at this club where he's working with the players and telling them the rights and wrongs of where he thinks they're going right and wrong. Right? You bring him in. Because he's got a wealth of experience, even at England, manager at Spurs, at Chelsea, and all that. I think he would I think he would improve players, and he would do a fantastic job. And then you leave the coaches to do that. You'd have to create a role for him that's separate. So as a new manager and assistant manager wouldn't be threatened. None of these managers excite me. Not one of them. Not one of them. And I don't know where you go really. I mean, where are these exciting managers that are bandied about? This is why we got these names linked with these names, because they've got a Premier League experience. Yeah, really, but none of them are exciting. What have they done? I mean, I know they're not with big clubs or bigger clubs with more wealth, but nah.
I mean, I would certainly argue they're all kind of. I mean, from in my eyes, they're all sideways steps. I mean, they're not. If you want, in I think in fans' eyes, they want to push on, they want to do something, and I just don't know and like Dave's touched on this, Iriola sort of flavour of the month. Yeah, he's done fantastic. I'm not going to take anything away from the guy, but I've said if you put his resume or CV against Angie's and you took the names off and you just had what they'd won in the game, and you'd ask somebody to pick one for a manager, without hindsight obviously being a thing, you'd have gone with the guy that's won in 3 different countries, not the guy that's staved off relegation and got the bottom half, even though it's the top part of the top of the bottom half of La Liga. So I just
I'd rather take an Ancelotti or a Bielsa. I really would, rather than I'd take Bielsa. He's older than all these. He mentored Poch. I'd take Bielsa over any of these listed here. I really would.
We're all football fans, At the end of the day, yeah, we want, we all want our football to be played a certain style. We all want to be entertained. We all want to see slick, sexy football. But at the end of the day, one thing I've learned, over the last few years is, realistically, Spurs fans don't actually really care about the style of football. They just care about winning. When we had Conte, the ideas that were put out there, we want to get back to playing the Tottenham way. We want to get back to playing on the front foot football, attacking football, modern football. This is what we kept on hearing, all these sort of, great phrases and stuff like that. We get that. It's not winning. All of a sudden, it's too gung-ho, it's too attacking. This ain't right, that ain't right, everything else. So to me, what I've learned is it's not about the style of play. We just want to win games. Honestly, once we get that trophy hoodoo off our back, then I think you'll see Spurs fans going, okay, we've got that trophy. Now I do want to be entertained. But right now, I don't think any Spurs fan cares how it comes. They just want to get over the line. But I'll be honest, I am one of them. This is where me and Jack do differ. Jack is the guy that does the defensive-minded football. He sees the art in it. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I grew up in an era where it was 4-4-2, put the ball on the 2 strikers, push up behind it and stuff like that. But I've always sort of, in training, and I've always been a bit of a dissenting voice. So I was like, look, we've got good enough players. We don't need to do that. We can pass out. We can play football. And that's the way I've always been. I've always been a guy that likes to play out from the back, play good attacking football. If you don't have it, go and press the opposition rather than retreat. I think retreating to a large degree is a sign of weakness. I've always been a guy that likes to go and push up, try and earn that ball back, turn it over quickly. But the reality is you do need good players to do that. You need good technical players, but you also need, players that are willing to run through a brick wall for you. And, we don't have that right now. But, that's the way I do want my football played. And even if they do get rid of Ange, I do want to see another attacking guy come in here. I do want to try and play that sort of football. But I'm also not naive to know. And I also see the art in being able to sit back, 11 men behind the ball, defending it, high-fiving, fist-pumping each other. I see the art in it. But at the end of the day, we just want winning football. That's all Spurs fans want right now. Honestly, they do not care about style play. Anyone that says they do is lying.
I think that's generational, David. I mean, I want to see attacking football. So I've come from a different generation. And I get that because most of the recent generations that have only seen us win one trophy, unless they go back to 1991. So I get that.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Alan, anything to add on the coaches?
No, nothing really that hasn't already been said. I also am not super jazzed about that list. I mean, they haven't really won anything. These are coaches that are just kind of just starting their ascent in the Premier League. But it just as Dave said, what good is it if we don't supply them with the right tools? And if we're not going to recruit the right players, if we're going to have Levy who kind of hamstrings the recruitment to begin with, it's just, we're going to see history repeat itself over and over and over again until, unfortunately, it kind of just goes all back to that, but that doesn't mean that we can't find a coach like Poch. Personally, I'm not a fan of going backwards, and with coaches. It's not to say that getting Poch would be going backwards. It's just I don't like looking backwards. You know, it's all It's all nostalgia and good press. He just promised himself to the U.S. men's national team. So he's here. He's going to be here. Look, because we're a host for the World Cup coming up.
Exactly.
And
I can't see him jumping ship really. I think, like Dave said earlier, he was answering a question. I mean, in my mind, if it had been me, I'd have said, obviously I've got a deep love for Tottenham Hotspur, but I got to respect the manager, and that's about all I'll say. The whole, wanting to come back, wanting to do that, I think it was just kind of tickling his ego a little bit and just seeing what the reaction would be. But, it is what it is. But we have been going just over an hour. I do want to say thank you very much to the 79 people I think we got here
Smash the like
watching.
button.
Fantastic. Yeah, smash the like button if you would. Go
And
over to
subscribe to
Alan's
the
channel. Got YouTube Tottenham Team Go, which is Alan's channel. And as I say, we've got the boys over from the Irish Hotspur. It's fantastic to have both of them. And we've mentioned players running through brick walls. So I think now is probably about the time where we should start breaking out the best Spurs 11 in the past 25 or so years. Now, basically, the stipulations were just Premier League, because I genuinely, obviously, wanted Mr. Paul Gascoigne in my team, but I didn't realise that he didn't play for us in the Premier League. So he, unfortunately, can't have him. So we might do some notable mentions. We'll see how the time goes. But for the start, obviously, we're going to go through positions. I do have lists of players in certain positions. But if you are in the chat, and if there is anybody, notable mentions, if there's anybody I've missed off like a complete idiot, as somebody happened to mention, I did missed off a certain player, and I'm not even going to throw myself in the mud because it was horrific. But we'll go forward. I think we'll have a look at the players. We'll touch on it. I don't want to go for too long. I understand we've been going for an hour already, and you could be here forever doing this sort of thing. So I'm conscious of time. We'll start with the goalkeepers. Now, obviously, there's probably a standout contender. But if there's anybody, if you wanted to touch on at all and just give a quick mention to, then obviously feel free to do so. But the goalkeepers, we've got Mr. Eric Torsved, Paul Robinson, Brad Friedel, Hugo Lloris, and Guglielmo Macario. Now, obviously, there are some players that have been left out there, but this is supposed to be a top or best squad. So I didn't really see the point in putting, your Neil Sullivan, although I did debate as to whether I should have put in a Mr. I've forgotten his name. Who was I thought about putting Gomez in. Yeah, I thought about putting Gomez in. I thought about putting Walker in, but
Gazaniga.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think we could probably. There are certain positions that I think could just stand out for one or two players, and I think this being one of them. Obviously, Hugo Lloris for the better part of 10 years, I think was our number one. So I think it probably goes to him. But yeah, guys, what do we think? I'll start with you, Dave.
Look, for me, I don't like the way Lloris left this football club. I don't like the way he quit on the team. And, again, I don't blame him as well. We had the chance to try and, get ahead of that. We pissed around with the likes of Galini, people like that. But, you got to respect what Hugo Lloris has done for this club, the service that he's given this club. And ultimately, he's brought me to the greatest heights of my lifetime. So I think, he's got to go in there. Don't get me wrong. Brad Friedel, fucking great goalkeeper in the Premier League. One of the least... But, he doesn't get enough praise, Brad Friedel. Anytime I watched him, even at Blackburn, so hard to beat. What a goalkeeper, size of the man. Paul Robinson, again, another good goalkeeper. Guglielmo Vicario, I think, he's a brilliant goalkeeper. But I just think if we're going off what people actually have done at Tottenham and what they've achieved, I think Hugo Lloris is by far the best.
Yeah, and just I just do want to point out, because Nita has said we had class players before the Prem, and I completely agree with that, Nita. I do understand. We were obviously, as I say,
I wasn't born before the Prem.
This is
this is But yeah, no, I did need to draw a line under it. So yeah, undoubtedly we had some fantastic, and we may, obviously Adrian may have to take lead on that show, but yeah, we may have to do a pre Premier League era of players, because there are some wonderful ones, and I think they do absolutely need to be talked about. Anybody on the panel that thinks it should be anything other than Hugo Lloris?
I just want to mention Lloris because, like, when players go, usually when we reach the end of the career, a lot of fans turn on players, and when they come back 2 years later and they've retired, all the love comes back for them. That seems to be pretty normal with football.
Yeah.
I tell you what I particularly remember about Lloris was the season when he saved the penalty against Arsenal for the 2-2. In that same season, he saved the penalty against Man City in the Champions League. Remember, we was all screaming because we thought it was a dodgy penalty. And then in the same season, he saved a penalty when we beat Leicester 5-4 from Vardy, which got us Champions League football. And I don't believe him as a goalkeeper. He would have stayed at this club if he wasn't a World Cup winner. I think that's what kept him there. I think he would have gone. And great servant, and my utmost respect for Lloris.
Fair play. All right, so I think I'm going to keep a list of this as well, and I'll go over the starting 11 at the end here. So we're going to move on to left back, and again, this is notable mentions, and if anybody has got any others that they can think of, then obviously we would give them a shot. But at the moment, we've got Mr. Justin Edinburgh, Christian Ziegler, Mauricio Taricco, Lee Young Pyo, Benoit Asawakotu, Danny Rose, and Destiny Udogie. So we'll start with you, Jack. What do you think about this left back selection? Any standouts or any glaring misses? And notable, Mr. Gareth Bale is further forward in my players and my positions. So he could be a notable mention at left back, but I don't think he won a game with us at left back. So yeah, what do you think? What do you think of these guys? Anybody stand out?
Technically, I hate to be a stickler here, but Ben Davies, for a while was technically left back, or at least was considered one. Danny Rose for me easily is by far the best one I've seen during my time. Then it would probably be Benoit Asawakotu after that. I think in Benoit's case, what's more impressive is just the fact that he actually didn't give a damn, about football, and was one of those, very famous players or infamous players for not knowing who even other footballers were on the opposition team. Like he cared that little, and I think that's always an impressive ability, to not care at all what you're doing for a living and yet still be very, very good at it. I think is an impressive feat. To be at the highest level of anything, you could be a banker, you could be a finance person, you could be a tech bro, whatever it might be, and just be so funny to be amazing at it, but then actually not care about it at the same time. So credit for that, but Danny Rose easily.
Fair play. Adrian, your thoughts on this selection? Any standouts? Anyone?
I love Justin Edinburgh's spirit. God rest his soul. My memory of him is him giving it as good as he could get against Roy Keane in the 91 Cup final. They were staring at each other, and Edinburgh wasn't having none of it. But I think, you can't really argue with Danny Rose there, can you? I can't think of anyone else in the Premier League era anyway.
Fair play. Alan, Dave, any notable mentions? Anything there?
I'll let Al go first if he's there.
Al?
No, I'll go first. Yeah, look, I would go with Danny Rose. I think, he was a brilliant left back for Tottenham. I remember his goal against Arsenal. I mean, absolutely thunderbolt, and I think, he had a good long career at Tottenham Hotspur. Initially when we signed him, he was a left winger. We converted him to a left back, and he was absolutely brilliant. Asawakotu, I don't think gets enough praise. Actually, he had 4 good years on the Harry Redknapp. Asawakotu, he's one of our consistent performers in that time. It's just the fact that he's notoriously known for hating football. I don't think he gets enough respect put on his name. And, there was a period there with injuries and stuff wasn't working out, but on the Harry Redknapp, I thought he actually had a good stint. So yeah, they would be my 2 standout. Lee Young Pyo, I don't know how he's made the list, honestly.
You know what? When I was looking earlier, Do you know what? When I was looking earlier, I actually found this article, and it was a list of like the best 15 left backs that Spurs have had in the Premier League era. And I was going to put Edmund, and
He
I
scored a
kind of
few
should have.
rockets.
I know I should have gone with my gut because they just had Lee Young Pyo ahead of him. So for some reason, I just went with Pyo. But yeah, Eric Edmund's a great shout. The Thunderbolt against Liverpool
Yeah,
was fantastic.
unbelievable.
Alan, any thoughts?
Danny Rose for sure for me,
Yeah, fair play.
100%.
All right. Well, this one gets a little tougher because I feel like you could have any number of two, any pair from this lot, and you do pretty good at the back. So what are we thinking about? Gary Mabbott, Ledley King, Michael Dawson, Dean Richards, Eunice Cabal, Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, Mickey van der Ven, and Christian Romero.
Are we doing
I
left-sided
mean,
center back and right-sided center back kind of same
yeah,
time?
well, yeah, I think, or just any. I mean, it'd be nice to have a left-sided and a right-sided, but I think probably given the fact that I mean, we had Ledley and Dawes, and I think they're both right-sided, so it can just be any mixture of the two or any notable mentions. But I think just one thing I would say is I think we've been inundated with talent at centre back at times throughout the course of the last 20 years. I will say that. And I just think there's some really, really delightful pairings in there. I mean, I've been having a hard time kind of picking, and
we missed out the man who scored the winner in the 2008 Cup final.
Woodgate. Jonathan Woodgate. See, this is what I mean.
That's okay, though.
There's some notable talent. Well, there's just some notable talent that you could really, and there's obviously I don't know what Blaine's up to. He's
Ginola's not allowed to play. He played under George Graham in 2000.
Well, yeah, he's in the chat here, and he's done an 11, and there's just a name in there that I never expected any Tottenham fan to ever put into an 11. But he's being very, very diplomatic about the whole thing. I'll let you guys figure it out. There was one name that I was not going to put into this centre back options because he just doesn't exist to me anymore. Guys, what do we think? We'll start with Alan. What do you think about centre backs, and then we'll go over to Dave.
Well, look, I remember Michael Dawson. I was a big fan of Michael Dawson. He was a bit of a leader on the pitch, and I don't know. Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, they were the center back pairing that I remember the most because they were together the longest for the amount of time I've been watching Spurs. So I would go Jan and Toby because Jan and Toby were just a wall. I mean, they really were. They were a wall consistently. We'd be in second place, first place. We were always. It felt like for a while there, we were always in the top four, and it was in no small part because of Jan and Toby.
Yeah, fair play. Dave, what do you think? You have a pair in there that stands out?
Look, I've had a look at Blaine's Tottenham 11, and he's put Sol Campbell in there. Now, what I will say is, I actually listened to his long interview on the overlap. And his time at Tottenham, he was treated badly, actually, and I can understand why he left the football club. But he did have Inter Milan and everybody else knocking, so it doesn't excuse him going to Arsenal. But his reasons for leaving the football club, I have to say, I can kind of understand it a lot more, actually. But look, because he went to Arsenal, Blaine, I'm never going to put him in there. But for me, do you know what? I'm going to Ledley King, I think, has to go in there. I mean, what a servant, club captain, picked up a trophy, one of our last trophy as well. And not only that, even though he had his knee problems, he still managed to get himself out on the field. And when he did, he was our best player 9 times out of 10. He was absolutely brilliant. So I always love Ledley. I think he has to go in there. And then I'm looking to balance it out. So then it's and this is where I go with Jan Vertonghen. Don't get me wrong, Toby Alderweireld was absolutely brilliant, and most people probably would go with Toby and Jan because didn't they have our best defensive record ever, under Pochettino. But Jan Vertonghen, another one. I thought he was another great centre back. Could run with the ball a bit like Mickey van der Ven. Actually, maybe not the greatest passer of the ball, but can run with the ball. Big strong guy as well. And I thought Jan Vertonghen was absolutely brilliant defensively. So I think brings great balance. But I do agree with Adrian. I can't believe you left Jonathan Woodgate out there. Even before he came to Tottenham, he had a great Premier League record. Went out to Real Madrid. Didn't work out there because of injuries and stuff. But one thing I will say is everyone loves Jonathan Woodgate. Apparently, he was an absolute psychopath. Brought great banter and stuff like that. But yeah, Ledley King and Jonathan Woodgate for me, or not Jonathan Woodgate. Sorry, Jan Vertonghen.
All right, Jack, what are your thoughts?
Ledley King was very much towards the end of during the end of his time at Spurs was kind of when I was becoming a Spurs fan. But just by reputation alone, and also, the fact that he is just regarded as Spurs' greatest center back for a lot of reasons, and then also maybe greatest would have been center back, apart from the injuries. I would go Ledley King, and then I would go Jan Vertonghen. If I'm going to go right side, then left side, I think you could probably give the edge to Ledley over Toby. And then, even though it pains me to say, because I know Toby during my time as a Spurs fan more than I do Ledley King, but I think Ledley King is just synonymous with Spurs. And then you would go with Jan Vertonghen as like the left-sided specialist defender for me, just because Jan Vertonghen, I think, is easily the best-sided left-sided center back I've seen. He could even also maybe just be a stickler again. He's one of the best left backs in Spurs.
Yeah. Adrian, anything different to that?
Pelter alert.
Uh-oh.
I'm going for technically players, the technical centre backs that are better. I'm going Ledley King and Christian Romero. I think Romero's a superb. I mean, I know the fan base are a bit marmite with Romero. I think he's a fantastic centre back, progresses the ball. Both players are good with the ball on the ground. They're just good all round. They're just superb technically. And that would be me, Ledley King and Romero.
Yeah. And I guess if you were building the perfect squad, I guess for your two right side, you'd have Ledley King and Romero, and for your two left, you'd have Vertonghen and Van der Ven, right? That'd be pretty stacked at centre back.
You'd have Toby Alderweireld or Michael Dawson as well in there, just in case injuries like this season.
Just in case.
Yeah.
I do agree with Alan, though. I actually don't think Michael Dawson gets enough respect. That guy was a warrior.
I loved him.
He gave every ounce to this football club when he was on the football pitch.
I think he recently left the
Still
club.
Loves him now, doesn't he?
In Poch's tenure, in Poch's 5.5 seasons, I think he got rid of 35 players, and I just don't think he saw. I wasn't happy when Dawson left, but I just think pace was the issue there with the way Poch played, and I think that's why Dawson was let go. Yeah, fantastic servant, and a good ambassador for the club even now.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I didn't really. Yeah, there wasn't too much in terms of the right back position. There wasn't a whole slew of options, but we do have a couple here. We'll pop them up. Got the legend that was Dean Austin, Stephen Carr, Carl Walker, Kieran Trippier, and Pedro Porro. As I say, nothing crazy. I think obviously the standout there for me has got to be Carl Walker. I think that's a sliding doors moment for me. If we'd have paid him, and he'd have not had his falling out with Poch, I don't know. I think we could have done bits, but there we go. What your Dave? We'll go to you. What do you think?
No Warrior, no Emerson, no Doherty there. I'm very disappointed here, Drew. No, look, for me, I think it's a toss-up between Stephen Carr and Carl Walker. I think you could argue with Stephen Carr. He's a fullback ahead of his era, one that liked to bomb down the line, and get forward. Look, I'll be honest, I loved Carl Walker, but I'm going to be biased here, and I don't care. I'm picking Stephen Carr.
Fair play, David. Do you know what? I absolutely respect that. I absolutely
And you're missing
do.
Stephen Kelly off the list as well.
There you go. Notable mentions. There we go.
And we missed Ginger Pelly off the centre-back list.
And Stephen Carr had a good link-up play with Simon Davies as well, down that right-hand side. Yeah, we're a false down that right-hand side.
Adrian, what do you think of it? Is it anybody other than Stephen Carr for you?
No, it's Carl Walker.
Carl Walker, fair play. Alan, what do you think?
Kyle Walker, 100%.
Carl. All right. Jack, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, easily Kyle Walker for me.
Oh, sorry,
I remember
Dave.
when he used to take free
Sorry, Dave.
kicks. That was a lot of fun. Remember he used to
Hmm.
just pile them over the crossbar. It was a lot of fun during. I think that was Andre Villas-Boas days.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, well, I'll tell you what. We'll move on, and obviously with the midfield, we're basically you could just pick a midfield three, and there are tons of players that I've missed off this list. We could be here all night. As I say, these were ones I gave myself an hour before the show. I thought it was going to be more to be able to put some together. And as I was saying to Jack backstage, when you're preparing for a show, like actually preparing, time seems to just
Stand
disappear.
still, it does.
Yeah, well, no, it disappeared for me. Like 1 minute, I thought I
That's
had an
what I do
hour,
mine the day
and then
before.
and then I put down a few names, and then before I knew it, it was like 10 minutes before the show. So there is a notable mention on here, Mickey Hazard, because he was here for the first year of the Premier League. But yeah, we got the likes of Popescu, Sherwood, Jermaine Genius, Michael Carrick, Luka Modric, Rafael van der Vaart, Moussa Dembele, Christian Eriksen, Dejan Kulusevski. Now, as I say, see, it was either going to be Wanyama or Dembele, but I can add him in. I mean, it probably should be both. You're right. See, this is why I had such a hard time with it, man. I could have been here all week. I should have been.
Scott Parker.
Scott Parker, yeah, I suppose. Yeah, a push. But what are we saying? I guess the idea was that we were going to be playing like a 4-3-3. So I guess it was like a holding and two attacking, or I mean, Jack, we'll start with you. Is there anybody I've been dumb enough to completely forget? Obviously, Wanyama aside, and
Could Poyet be in there?
who?
Gus Poyet?
Gus Poyet could have been in there at a push. I mean, there's an argument for the defensive midfield maestro that was Eric Dyer before he got pushed to centre back.
That's absurd.
I knew I was going to get absurd.
Why did I think Mickey Hazard was not in the Premier League era?
He's not. He wasn't in the Premier League. He was in the 80s side.
He was in the, I could have swore he was in the squad for 91. Was he not? Is that a different Mickey Hazard?
No, he played in the 84 Europa Cup final.
Hang on a minute. I'm going to Wikipedia. You wait. You just wait.
Pescu was a defender.
He makes a list
Pescu
for me.
was
But,
defensive
No,
midfielder,
he played from 93 to 95. The Premier League was formed then, wasn't he, Mickey Hazard? You're right. He was in the squad. It says 1980 to 1985 and then 1993 to 1995.
Yeah. Thank you. Yep, he was. I do my due diligence, Adrian. I do my due diligence.
in that case, if I can put in Mickey Hazard, again, obviously before my time, but similar to what I said about Ledley, just by reputation alone, and from what I've been told, I'd go Mickey Hazard, Luka Modric, and then Moussa Dembele is my midfield. I think if I were to not include Mickey Hazard for whatever technicality, if someone wanted to throw in there, then I'd probably go Van der Vaart as well, and then do Moussa Dembele, Rafa, and Luka.
We're leaving Dele Alli out as best, yeah.
Yeah, probably. I mean, he's more of I don't know. I did more of an attacker, but yeah, I think I did leave him out as well, just because I don't know.
Yeah,
Is he the best not number 9, not number 10 we've ever 9.5 we've ever had 10.5? I don't know. I also forgot there was somebody in the chat that put in a name that I'm kind of kicking myself for. Yeah, David Kerslake, of course.
Sancho is another honourable mention as well.
Yeah, and I forgot Chimbonda at right back. Rich, you're right. You're right. That's absolute sacrilege. I forgot Luka. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he was a good player. Do you know what? For me, when I look at that midfield, I think I'd go Michael Carrick as a deep lying sort of midfielder that can get on the ball and retain possession. Then Moussa Dembele, a guy that is just a destroyer in the midfield and can run with the ball, and then just give it to Luka Modric and let him feed the attackers. So that's my midfield.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. That's actually, I wasn't thinking that at all, but now you've put that out there. That sounds pretty decent. Anybody else think that maybe? I mean, it's really hard leaving out Van der Vaart, but
I think for a lot of younger fans like myself, even though Van der Vaart, I feel like, was probably a better player on his day in terms of just having maybe sort of world-class ability. Christian Eriksen, within the context of, him even versus James Madison, like Christian Eriksen was a pretty incredible player. And also with the 100 million spent plus of the Gareth Bale money, he was, I think him and Vertonghen, right, were like the two players that you would say were actually the successful ones. And then the rest of them were either meh or big failures of signings. And Eriksen, I remember kind of from the get-go, I felt like he kind of carried us when he was brought into the team. And I believe he was sort of carrying us before, just for a brief period, but this is before even the emergence of Harry Kane and the rest of them. I felt like, Eriksen he's a very, very good player, but it is unfortunate to see him miss out. I'm not including him in my list, but I do
Modric
think
is a better passer all day long than Eriksen.
all along, I was thinking if I was going to do between Van der Vaart and Eriksen, I might have included Eriksen, but I think Van der Vaart, from what I could tell, again, he was sort of, that's when I was becoming a Spurs fan, but Van der Vaart, you sort of know about his days at Real Madrid, about his days at Hamburg as well. And then just, you kind of know that he was a world-class player on his day.
Adrian?
Yeah, it's a good call for Carrick, but I'd have Dembele holding with Modric and Van der Vaart. I don't think you'd need Carrick with that quality you've got there. I think we'd have too much of the ball.
Yeah, that's fair. Alan?
Yeah, I only know Van der Vaart by reputation and by highlights that I've seen, and but I would pick what Adrian said: Luka Modric, Moussa Dembele, and Van der Vaart.
Okay. All righty. Now, there were two standouts for the left wing, and if anybody can think of anybody else that would be better than these two, then go ahead. But
You don't get these lists up because it is hard. You're not missing.
All right. It's basically Gareth Bale and Heung-min Son. Yeah. I was kind of a little bit stuck.
Can I start with this on Bale? Like, Bale is, I've made this case to Dave, as much as I think Kane is the greatest ever striker I'll see in my lifetime. I have said, based on ability alone, I think Gareth Bale is the greatest ever player I will ever see in a Spurs shirt. Like, the dude could, again, during the Villas-Boas days when I really was becoming obsessed with Spurs, you don't see this as much anymore, but a player who could just put the team on his back, score a goal out of nothing. The game is dead. It's boring. Nothing's happening. Takes on 3-4 players, puts in a delicious cross or fires one in from 30, 40 yards out. Like, very few players do that. And Gareth Bale, for me, was that. And also the pace, the power, the skill, everything that he had. He's scored the greatest goals I've ever seen in a Spurs shirt as well, in my opinion, Gareth Bale. As much as I'm a huge Sonny fan as well. Like, I cried when Kane left. I'll cry when Sonny left, when Sonny leaves. But Gareth Bale, for me, like, literal ability alone, I think he is the greatest player I've ever seen in a Spurs shirt.
What's the stats of Bale's goals at Spurs? I know Sonny's got 170 odd, and his assists are mental. They must be 70 odd. What's the stats for Bale's goals?
I'm not even sure. It's just I think of some of the goals that dude has scored, and incredible.
Yeah, he was a game changer and won games, didn't he? Like
the last
goal against West Ham away and things like that. You remember them,
Yeah, like Son's goal,
42 goals in 146 games.
But like Son, you look at Son's goal. He gets, like, don't get me wrong, great praise for the Puskas goal. But I'm almost sure I've seen Gareth Bale do that time and time again in a Tottenham jersey. Snapping in goals
3 times in one game, didn't he?
Exactly. Like, and you know what? I go back to that Inter Milan game. People forget
3 goals, yeah.
But people forget. Not only that, you go back to that Inter Milan backline. Lucio, one of the best defenders ever. Yeah. Walter Samuel, Maicon. He retired all 3 of them in one night. You know what I mean? He retired 3 of the world's best defenders in one night. People forget that. And for me, I think exactly what Jack said, I've never seen, the guy literally carried the team on his back. You look at Son when he's, he doesn't have a lot of great players around him, but he hasn't shown that ability to put the team on his back and go and win us games of football, whereas Gareth Bale did. So for me, I think Gareth Bale all day long. I'd also argue if Son played, when Gareth Bale started playing, and you could tug on the jersey, you could take people out and stuff like that, would Son have the same effect? I'm not quite so sure.
Well,
Fair
just on
play.
the Gareth Bale thing, it was interesting what Aaron Lennon said. He said, when I was first in his team before Bale come, he said they'd put 2 players on me. He said once Bale was in the side with me, the teams didn't know what to do. They couldn't put 2 players on each of us. So
Yeah. And then I guess there is an argument for, depending on, you know, I always saw when we were watching, or when I was watching Spurs play Bale, it was typically on the left side. It wasn't like on the right side inverting like, you know, Salah does. So there is an argument that he could be for the, you know, he could be a right winger, but I think we're just going to go for a bit more of a traditional. So for me, he goes onto the left wing, which means for me on the right wing, notable mention for a Mr. Darren Anderton, even though he's technically a right midfielder. But for me, I think it's got to be David Ginola. Even though we've got Simon Davies, Aaron Lennon, Steve Bergwijn, and Lucas Moura, I think to have a left wing of Bale and a right wing of Ginola, I think would have been absolute mustard in their prime. Jack, what are we saying about that? Any for you? Because I think was Ginola maybe
a little bit before me.
you.
A little bit before me, so sadly, it's the choices of Aaron Lennon, Steven Bergwijn, and Lucas Moura. You know, I don't think it's
or Brennan Johnston, if you like. I mean, you could throw...
yeah, of course. But I'll go with Aaron Lennon. I mean, what you have to like about Aaron Lennon is, like, again, maybe ode to the traditional winger. You know, the guy that just relentless at running out his fullback, creating space, being havoc. Low center of gravity too, which seems like to be not as common nowadays. I don't know why that is, but a lot of wingers back then did seem to have. Ribery might have been a good example, you know, someone like that, you know, just sort of very low to the ground. Hazard too, like even not Mickey Hazard, but Eden Hazard. I think that's what made him so brilliant, was like he was just so small and sort of, you know, kind of just was able to maneuver in all these little areas. And Aaron Lennon was similar and just was a very traditional, hardworking winger, and love to have him right now in this Ange Postecoglou system. Would kill to have someone like Aaron Lennon. I think he would be great. So yeah, Aaron Lennon for me.
Fine. Alan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat. Where I remember watching Aaron Lennon. I remember Steven Bergwijn and Lucas Moura. Bergwijn and Moura had their moments of brilliance. You know, they really did. Lucas Moura against Ajax. Bergwijn, when did he score those 2 last-minute goals, right? Or was it 3?
It was against Leicester, yeah, Leicester away.
It was Leicester, right. Yeah. I remember that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This, you know, but probably got to go with Aaron Lennon.
I think Lucas Moura was a tad bit above Steven Bergwijn, you know, in terms of even ability. Like Lucas Moura, like what was frustrating about him was that, you know, sometimes he really could take it past 5-6 players and then just score a pretty spectacular goal. It's just he didn't do it often enough, which was kind of the confusing part with Lucas Moura. He had a lot of ability, it just didn't show up all the time, and he worked pretty hard for the most part.
Yeah, Dave.
Look, I think Darren Anderton is a bit forgotten at Tottenham. I think, you know, he was a wonderful crosser of the ball. You know, you look at players in the Tottenham team now trying to cross the ball. It's pathetic when you see what Darren Anderton do consistently. Problem is, he was always injured.
He wasn't, though, Dave. That's the myth. He played 492 games in his career, right? He played about 400 Spurs. For Spurs, he played well over 300 games, which to me, if you play 300, you get legend status.
I get what you're saying, but you don't earn the reputation.
It's one of those myths that grew. It's false.
Fair enough. No, look, fair enough. Maybe that's a show you can do. You can come up and show everyone why the narrative around Anderton is false. But when it comes to Aaron Lennon, another one that I don't think gets enough respect either. I think, you know, me, when I was growing up, I was very similar to Aaron Lennon. You know, I was the same size. You know, I was a good-looking guy as well. You know, I was a bit of a Lothario. You know, I used to get the slits in my eyebrow from that Aaron Lennon used to get and stuff like that. I absolutely loved the guy. You know, for such a small player, just to terrorize people game in, game out, it was absolutely wonderful to see. However, there's only one guy here for right wing, and that's Mr. Sexy himself. That's David Ginola. You know, when my dad first started bringing me to the lane, you know, he was the guy that just made me get up out my seat, go, wow, you know, made me love football. Seeing what he could do on the ball, the magic he could produce, how happy he can make people, how good you can make yourself look. And honestly, people talk about, all these adverts and all these deals people get. He was the first to get that. He was getting, hair sponsorships before fucking Joe Hart. You know what I mean? What a guy. he was the ultimate David Ginola. I love him.
Yeah, fair play. Yeah, I think I've got to go with Ginola as well. He was just sensational. So that leaves us with centre forward / striker.
Yeah,
Now, there is an argument. What's that?
You haven't asked me yet. My choice.
Oh, my bad, Adrian. I'm sorry. Go on, mate.
It's all right. I'm going Darren
It's because you
Anderton.
talk so much about everything else.
I'm going Darren Anderton. Add it all. Not the lungs,
right.
not the crosses. Could beat the man, put the shift in. Ginola's sexier, because the skill factor and all that is over a way about it. Trap a ball, bring a ball down. No, ain't seen nothing like it in a winger that can do that. He used to control impossible balls. But Darren Anderton would just give you so much more of a team player. Track back. He's just a complete wide man, as far as I'm concerned.
He's always injured, though, Adrian. You never get him on the pitch.
All right. So the last position, and a couple of these, as I say, centre forward, striker. A couple of these are going to be deep lying striker, centre forward. There's an argument for maybe, obviously, the great Teddy Sheringham being a bit more of a number 10, but I wasn't going to have him in midfield. So up front, we've got the options of Teddy Sheringham, Gordon Jury, Les Ferdinand, Sergei Rebrov, Roman Pavlyuchenko, Robbie Keane, Dimitar Berbatov, Jermaine Defoe, Mido, Peter Crouch, and Harry Kane.
No Janssen.
I thought about putting Janssen. I thought about putting Soldado, but honestly, we were going for the, as I say,
back striker.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't want to leave off Gregor Rash. What's his name? Raziak from Reading.
Rebrov.
Yeah, we got Rebrov in there.
No Adebayor.
No Adebayor. No, sorry, not happening. What do we? Do you know what? It was hard because I think there's been a plethora. I mean, I've got such a soft spot for Teddy Sheringham. I think he's an absolute genius. But for me, Teddy Sheringham always played in a 2, and this is a 4-3-3. And I don't really think he's a line leading forward necessarily. I think he does better playing as a 2 with somebody off of him. For me, I mean, I know it might be recency bias, but I just can't help but think prime Bale and prime Ginola with prime Kane is just a match. There's just class oozing in that front line. But also, Dimitar Berbatov was an absolute genius for me on a football. Just some of his touches and the way he worked off of Robbie Keane. But again, I think there's an argument that if you're going slightly earlier days when we did play somewhat a 4-4-2, or at least 2 up front with a big man, little man combo. I think the Robbie Keane, Dimitar Berbatov years aren't to be, neglected. I mean, there was just some wonderful link-up play.
I don't think Robbie Keane gets enough respect either, though. People praise Solanke and Richarlison for the work rate out of possession. This guy was doing it before it was even a common thing. Not only that, he could do. He was a little guy in an era that was predominantly 6'4" plus big guys. And he was able to hold his own. And not only that, you talk about a player that could get in the box, sniff out chances, a player that could get on the ball, run at people, create chances, a guy that can finish chances and make his own goals. Robbie Keane does not get enough respect for how great of a fucking player he was. However, saying all that, there's only one player here. There's no discussion. Anyone that says anybody else doesn't know football. It's the one and only Mr. Harry Kane. Club's top goal scorer.
Hey, he's a one-season wonder.
Look how that happened. What was it? Ended up being a 10-season wonder. But, Harry Kane, greatest goal scorer ever in world football, especially at Tottenham Hotspur as well, all-around player. Even if he wasn't being provided chances by Bale or Ginola, which he would, it doesn't matter. He'll create them for them either. So for me, Harry Kane is the guy.
I'm going to pretend I didn't just put Jurgen Klinsmann in here because I forgot about him. I forgot about him. But yeah, I still think it's Harry Kane. Jack, what are your thoughts?
Has to be Harry Kane, easily the greatest striker I think I'll ever see. I think I'll put that, hands down, and I'll say kind of the same, like I said with Bale as well, just the greatest that I'll ever see. And there's that great compilation. I forget who done it, but it was that one, and it starts out with like Rio Ferdinand's, sort of voice in the background, and it goes like, talk about like, what's the greatest striker in the world, and he goes like Harry Kane, Harry Kane, and he kind of sort of talks about all the things that he sort of does. It's like an 8-minute compilation, and it's like 3-4 minutes of just all the passes that he could play, the link up play that he has, switches of play, balls in behind. And then sort of the next 4 minutes is just all these incredible goals that he's also scored for us as well. I think if you just watch that video alone, it's just reminds you of.
It's a real tearjerker.
Not the best.
It's a tearjerker as well. It made me cry. But it just, when you watch it, you're like, you're not going to get something like that really ever again. And that's what I get with Kane, which is really sad. That's what maybe pulls on the heartstrings for me with Bale, Son, and Kane, is that it's like, are you really going to like see anything better than that? Probably not, and that's what makes you, that's what makes you emotional about it.
Yeah.
Not the best at free kicks though, was he?
No.
Came with the contract, I think.
He did score one to save Pochettino's job.
He's in the contract,
Yeah,
I swear.
he flicked one off of Villa, didn't he?
Yeah, he did score one to save Pochettino's job.
Yes, the Villa one, yeah. And he scored one when the ball was just tapped to him and he hit it.
Unbelievable.
Was it against Liverpool that he did kicked it over?
Yeah, he passed to Sonny, didn't he? That big, long, quick forward pass, angled ball for Sonny to go and
when we sit here and talk about it, I'm going to cry. Honestly.
Right, okay.
All right. Well, I'm just going to.
Anyone else picking anyone different? No?
No. I'm going for the one season wonder man, yeah.
I really just like, if people haven't seen that compilation, it's like genuinely like, I think it's the greatest compilation of any striker I've ever seen. Really, like, I put it up there like with, it's special. It really is special.
As for skill though, I've never seen a forward got the skill of Berbatov though.
He was so good.
Yeah.
Something else. It's just a delicate touch for like a guy.
Teddy Sheringham, though, you hear a lot of Tottenham players or players in general at United. They all say they learned so much, especially strikers learned so much.
Shearer loved playing with him. Shearer loved playing with him. So did Klinsmann.
Sheringham doesn't actually get enough respect because, the amount of people that, you hear say learned so much off him, and, way before his time, to a point where he was like, guys, you see Messi being praised for it, where he sort of stands still and lets the game evolve around him. Teddy Sheringham was being praised for that long before Messi.
Yeah, very true. All right, well, so I guess here we are. There was kind of a toss-up. The Carrick Dembele at the back, it was like one or the other. I think we agreed it had to be, but we're looking at Lloris in goal. You got Rose, King, Vertonghen, and Walker on the back. We get either Carrick or Dembele, Van der Vaart, Modric, and then Bale, Kane, and Ginola up front. Do we think that's winning us a trophy?
That team's winning the World Cup. That team's winning the World Cup, mate. I don't know about trophy.
That team's winning everything that the game has to offer.
Yeah, and I take that team. They'll even win the boat race. That team would win the boat race as well. I'm telling you.
Well, I think, and we can, of all the players that aren't in the starting 11, we could make a pretty decent bench as well. So
especially with forwards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Forwards and centre backs, I think we got covered.
Yeah.
Midfield, I think, yeah.
You'd have an unreal 25-man squad, mate. You'd be just littered with talent.
Yeah, absolutely would. You absolutely would.
That was good fun.
That was enjoyable. Very enjoyable. I tell you what, we'll just move on quickly. We'll go, obviously, with the international break is upon us. I've not really been paying too much attention because I'll be honest with you, not a huge fan of international football. But we do have next fixtures. We'll just touch on these quickly. We're coming up to an hour and 48 minutes. It's been great having you guys. I appreciate you sticking around. Still got 76 people watching. Thank you very much. Keep smashing that like button. It's a pleasure to have you here.
And subscribe to the channel, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to, let me get the banners out. Remember to subscribe to Team Tottenham Go and also the Irish Hotspur. So just before we go, we'll come back to 2025, as nice as it's been to think about the past and reminisce a little bit. We'll touch on the fixtures coming up. Adrian asked me or suggested that we might not field a completely strong squad for Chelsea because wanted a full strength for Southampton. My argument is, I think at this point of the season, barring risking more injury to players, I think we should be going full strength for everything and trying to get as far up the table as possible. So, with
Yeah, I
that
just
being
wanted to
said,
guess-
when we go on, Adrian, sorry.
I just wanted to guess, how do you think Angie's going to approach this? All this rubbish about we're not taking the Europa League seriously. His job hangs on it, right? So,
Right.
I mean, do you think he would go a little bit easy on Chelsea, go strong with his team against Southampton that's going to play against Frankfurt? That's what I was going to ask, basically.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you're saying.
Yeah,
All right. Well, let's put it out.
Frankfurt's the important game here.
Right. We'll put it out to the panel. What do we think? Anyone want to take lead?
I mean, I think with Chelsea, look, Chelsea's just a better team right now. They just are. I hate admitting it, but they started under Pochettino.
Alan, when you say better team, you just mean they've got better players, or right now they're a better team, like actually on the field? Because I mean, their form's dipped a little bit, and there's people even suggesting that Cole Palmer's had enough, and he's about to. So,
I mean, that's possible, but I think that they're just overall. I think they restarted a project under Pochettino, and they're kind of a little further along in their progression of a project. But I'm more concerned about the Southampton game, not necessarily winning that game, but Southampton are going to get relegated. They're at the bottom. I don't think. I'm wondering when mathematically they're out. It's going to be
not far away.
Yeah, they can't be that far away. Which means they've got nothing to lose. And players and teams that have nothing to lose can afford to be reckless, overly aggressive. You know, they can, because they're just playing to play at that point. And I'd be concerned that we would lose maybe a player to injury. You know, I would hate to see someone go out on the Southampton game just before we go against Frankfurt, because some guy on Southampton was overzealous and took out one of our guys.
Yeah, fair play.
And to be fair, it's kind of a write-off. I would rather see us play a lot more of the younger players during the Prem. Give Mikey Moore a chance, give Odebear more chances, give Tell a chance on the wing. Start playing our youth, because we're kind of lame duck in the league. You know, that even if we were to make it up, I don't know that I want your Europa Conference. I mean, yes, it's a league, but I think it's more detrimental.
Can we be that picky as a football team?
West Ham won it. They were buzzing.
Yeah, right. Is it right for us to sit here and say, well, we want to win a trophy, and then when the opportunity of a trophy arrives, it's like, well, I don't want to win that one.
No.
I want to win, I want to win the bigger one, the nicer one. I get where you're coming from. But I just don't know.
It's not about the trophy. It's not about the trophy for me.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't about the trophy for me.
Do you not think if we get Europa Conference, surely it's at least then an opportunity because we're crying out, our youngsters aren't going to get a chance. Like if we didn't have the injury problems, our youngsters aren't going to get a chance. Well, if we cut our nose off to spite our face and say, well, I don't want Europa Conference, then that's an opportunity of 8 games that youth players aren't going to get to further their careers. So from that point of view,
you're right.
And this is just to touch on Daniel 90. Big up Daniel 90. Appreciate you being here. In fairness, what are you expecting from the league other than getting any more up the league? Because in real, it's only more prize money for extra positions. And there is an argument to that, but then there's also something for wanting to hold your head up and be a proud Spurs supporter. And I just think if I could finish 8th, why would I not want to finish 8th? If 10th's as high as I get, then I want to finish 10th. But if there's an opportunity for 8th, I'd like to try and strive for 8th. last year, I think we kind of slept, and I think there was a lot of faffing around, and I think supporters went a little bit weird because they didn't want a certain club to win the league at the detriment of us, not winning the game. And I just think if we'd have just worried about us rather than worried about everybody else, there's an argument that we could have finished third last year. I mean, obviously, if buts and maybes and bollocks, but I don't know, man. I just want us to play well, be consistent, and finish as high as possible, just so that I can carry on wearing my Spurs top at work and people don't cotton on to the fact that I support a mid-table team. That's basically
Yeah.
what I'd like. But yeah, big up, Daniel. I really appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much. You're always a big contributor to the chat, and it's great to have you. So thank you again.
Yeah, for me, I think, look, Spurs fans won't tolerate us throwing that Chelsea game. At the end of the day, it's a London derby. It's a pride thing, especially with their history and their behaviour towards Spurs fans in the past. It's just the way we are, whether you like it or not. We won't tolerate, putting out a crap team and almost throwing that game to a large degree. And I don't think we need to. I think Southampton is a game where you can protect your better players, wrap them in cotton wool a bit then for that Frankfurt game. If that was me in charge, and the pressure that I'm facing, that's the way I would handle it personally. But, I do think we should, if there is a chance we can scrape a Europa League conference place, I'll take it. I mean, I sat there, I watched that West Ham game. I didn't see them fans care it was Europa Conference League. They seen it as a European trophy, and now they whip us with it. So for me, and like you said, Drew, I think, if we don't have any sort of form of European football next year, that's where you will see a lot of these youngsters being forced out on loan because the game time just won't be there for them. So, Europa Conference League is a great way to, blood them and give them experience.
That's true. I didn't think about that. That's a good point.
Yes, we could only have one game a week, which then the new manager will be laughing because, he'll have time on the training field. But we're going to win it, guys. I had a tenner at 9-2.
So we're going to Bilbao, right?
Telling you.
That's why they didn't. Dave, I heard you mention earlier in the year, didn't they? They opened up a new ferry lane directly to Bilbao from Ireland just for you for the final, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's where I sort of, I got giddy at the start of the season. I was like, it's God just giving me signs saying we're going to get there. But, as the season's gone on, I've sort of, waned a little bit in that belief. But if we do, I mean, there's no excuse because there's an easy route. I just take a 2-day boat journey and bang, Dave's in Bilbao celebrating. So, hopefully we make it there. Because also the 2-day boat journey is like a mini cruise at the end of the day. I've always wanted to do a cruise. I can't afford to do a cruise. So if I'm on a ferry for 2 days, it's similar.
Brilliant. That's a great outlook. Great outlook. Jack, haven't heard from you in a minute. What are your thoughts on the next few games? You optimistic, pessimistic, just hoping for the best like the rest of us, I'm assuming.
Unfortunately, pretty pessimistic. Against Chelsea, I mean, we just never beat them. It'd be great if we did, but we
Jack,
never
you're supposed
beat
to be a happy clapper, mate.
I know it's been really tested this year. It's been really tested. I'd rather go all out against Chelsea than against Southampton. Personally, I think you should beat Southampton, even with almost your academy. To be honest, like they're just one of the worst Premier League teams in the last few years. I don't see the point in playing your strongest team against Southampton. You're better off playing a team like Chelsea, who are good, and maybe go with your best team against them or version of your best team in preparation for the Frankfurt game, which is obviously the most important game. But maybe it would be good to test yourself against a good side like Chelsea to then prepare yourself for Frankfurt. Whereas if you were to roll your best team against Southampton, I don't know what sort of benefits you're getting in preparation for the Frankfurt game personally.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Right. If we just finish, I do this to shame the media outlets and all them low tier outlets, right? I just want to give you guys in the channel just a little glance, and these are just the ones that we've been linked with recently. There's 2 banners, right? This is who we've been linked with. Eze, Walton, Guay, Fratesi is a DM, Gomez a DM, that's Angel, Semenyo, Bellingham, Dilap, Kuna, Cardoso, DM, Lukeman, Ratu is a Romanian right back, Gittin, Sesko, Paz is a cam, Darson the DM, Vlahovic, right, that's 17. There's another 17 here, Diblin, Howard Bells is a defender at Southampton, Omrodin is a striker at Porto, 6'4", but he's only 20, Sirkin left back at Sunderland, Hanko, who I like, 8 Nuri, strong links with him recently, left back at Wolves, Gutierrez, Thuram's a striker. You ain't getting him. Joel Gomez at Wolves again. DM. Jack, what do you know about Kremeski? He's a DM. He plays in the MSL. David, we know Jonathan David. Coleman, Kimmich, DM. Girok Isaacson, who's a winger at Lazio. Kirkes, we know he played very well against us recently for Bournemouth. 34 guys and counting. We ain't even nowhere near the season's end. So you can all have a laugh. Jack and Alan, do you know anything about Kremeski? He's getting a few ratings in the MSL.
I don't. In the MLS, I don't. He doesn't. He doesn't ring a bell.
I don't pay
No,
attention much
not
to the
on my
MLS.
radar.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. That's fair enough. That
We'll
was
have
just
to do some digging. But I mean, just based on the fact that if you have a look through the last couple of seasons and you look at permanent and loan, the turnover of players that we've had is pretty ridiculous compared to most other teams. Do you think being linked to another 34 players just goes to show how disjointed we are when the likes of your sort of Liverpools and them lot up the road, who I do hate to mention, just only ever, it's not like they seem to ever be linked to one or two, but they do have a bit more specific targets, whereas we seem to be a little bit all over the place. I mean, does that just kind of reflect us as a club?
Yeah, look, it's the thing is with the football transfer window and rumor mill, it's become big business, right? So it's sort of like any club in turmoil, you're just going to see them continue to print leaks.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Paratici was famous for, using the media, spinning 10, 15 plates on, this is what we're after. And then the media's over here and he's over there operating, doing something different, When we signed Basuma, all the talk was about Christian Eriksen. Next thing, Basuma arrives in. So it shows that they haven't a clue. All the talk was about that idiot, Tommy Asu, that ended up at Arsenal. We ended up signing Romero, so it just goes to show they haven't a clue. And then also with Johan Lang, it's notorious that no one knows what he's going to do. If he doesn't know what he's going to do, how can you expect anyone else to know what he's going to do? So, the reality is they're just making them up, knowing that we're going to click on it. It's the truth.
The ITKs, I think, in the last 2 or 3 windows since Johan Lang has come in, I think they've gotten royally exposed because so many of the players that we were linked with, so many of the players that they were saying we're in conversations with, we're nearly have them through the door. They ended up signing someone that they didn't mention once, all of a sudden. So if anything, just because Dave and I aren't in the ITK business of, reporting transfer stories, every single day, that kind of thing. And I'll be honest, I would say proceed with heavy caution going into the summer window, because the last window, Ali Gold to Paul O'Keefe to everybody, they got them all wrong. They did. Yeah. So, and those are guys that are supposedly very close to the club. And they even got most of their links wrong.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to I think when Paul O'Keefe, I think he dropped a bit of a clanger when he was going on about how we were going to cut loads of contracts for players and there was going to be this big overhaul. And I mean, that's kind of partially true, but as far as the cutting of the contracts, I mean, that didn't happen. Like he said, there was going to be mass, 4 or 5 people. They were just going to spend the money to get him out the door. And it didn't happen. So I think you're correct to proceed with caution. I can't see any more than 3, 4 at the most, really. But well, there's a long way to go and plenty of football to be played. I'm conscious that we've been going for a couple of hours. Obviously, it's getting a little late over there. It has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate it. Thank you again to the 78 currently watching. Really do appreciate it. Don't forget to smash a like and please do subscribe if you like our content. We are here every Friday, myself and Adrian, and we do the 10 p.m. start time GMT. Just to try and capture a bit more of the sort of North American and Australian audiences. Just to be a little fair on you. We understand that you have to get up at all sorts of times to watch Spurs, so we like to try and make it a little easy on you.
If we get Jack and David back next week or whatever, we could do a historical perspective of Spurs wins, of what your memories are of, if those of you can remember any of our cup victories, right? Quite a few, but so we could do something on those lines. It's just a thought that comes to me now, but obviously we won't be doing a show Sunday and Tuesday because it is the international break, unless there's a PR blunder and something breaking news on Spurs. It's just like,
Right.
what are we actually going to do? We don't want to waffle on and just talk for the sake of it,
No, absolutely. So yeah, as I say, thank you very much for joining us. It's been fantastic. Really enjoyed putting together this Premier League 11. Let's hope that Spurs can do something in the market and do something with this squad, and hopefully going forward we can get some of these not obviously these players, but the sorts of skills that these players gave us, and the wow factor that these gave us in the past. Hopefully we can get some going forward. It's been a pleasure hosting the show, Adrian. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure kicking with you as always. Alan, want to thank you very much for your participation. Again,
My pleasure as always.
People can find you over at Team Tottenham Go. Yeah, regular Friday guest or panelist. And again, Jack and Dave, it is always a pleasure sharing the screen with you, fine gentlemen. You're obviously over at the Irish Hotspur. Let everyone know what you got coming up over the international break, if anything.
Yeah, look, first of all,
pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, that's first of all, I just want to say, I've really enjoyed it. It's been fun. Thank you very much. What else would I be doing on a Friday evening? I don't drink, I don't go out, so there's nothing else for me to do. So I appreciate it, and everyone that has tuned in, make sure you do get across and smash the subscribe for these guys. They really, do deserve it. They're trying to put out good Tottenham content out there. It's enjoyable for us guests to be on, and get behind them. They're true Spurs fans. So, they absolutely love this club. So make sure you get behind them. Jack, I suppose I'll let you take over what's coming up. You're probably better at plugging it than I am.
We're doing a next gen, reacting to the top 50 next gen list, which has 5 Spurs players in it. Dave and I just sort of judge, if the rankings are fair or not, and sort of what the future holds for them. And then on Sunday, little kit reaction release, for the 2025-26 season, reacting to those. And then on Monday, we'll be looking at that contract review, which I think we had a conversation last time I was on here about to some degree, the last Friday night. So almost stealing from you guys, in that part. And we're continuing on the conversation. So thank you guys. So absolute pleasure.
Good and with that, we'll play you out with Dreams of Desire, and we'll see you guys in the back room.
Good